Hello, this is Stonewater coming back at you today with another video update. And today we're going to talk about the increasing probability that we have a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, particularly the eastern Gulf of Mexico, as we get into later on this week. And we could possibly be looking at some of the higher end scenarios panning out. So this could certainly be a really dangerous situation. But before I get into that, I just want to apologize for my lack of updates the last 2 days. Life has come again, so I apologize for the lack of updates, but we're getting into crunch mode now, and I will certainly have a daily update for you guys every single day this week, regardless of what it is that I have going on. I will have a daily update for you guys each day because we're looking at a pretty dangerous situation later on this week in eastern Gulf of Mexico if things develop like I think they will. So we're first off going to start off by getting a look at the Caribbean right now, and you see a couple areas of some convection, some thunderstorms, but generally things are looking pretty broad. There's no real low level circulation, which is what we always talk about here when we talk about the tropics. But I'm telling you, as we get to later on this week, things are looking to be quite significant, and so we're going to look at some newest model data that has come in today, but I just want to give you an overall look at what our system looks like. And again, I think the area that we're really watching is maybe this area over right here of this blow convection, just east of the islands. So we'll watch this area to see what it can do. But there's also a couple areas of convection over far to our far east. But I think this area over here will be the area to watch. So overall, that'll be the area to watch over the next few days for development of our new tropical cyclone. So here's the National Hurricane Center outlook, and we are at a code red, guys. We're at a 70% chance of cyclone formation. More than likely, this gets pushed up to an 80, and then we're probably gonna have an invest tag on this at some point once we can get a much more low-level center or circulation. But we're in a code red, which means there's quite high probability that we're going to see an area of low pressure develop and move into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. There's still some slight differences as to where exactly this makes landfall, which is to be expected this early on. But generally, the consensus has been over the last few days that this is going to move into the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And honestly, that's what I favored, when I was talking about this last week. So we're going to start looking at the newest 12Z model run of the GFS, and this just came out not too long ago. So we're gonna go through this. We're gonna get right into it today, guys. And again, this model, I mean, it's showing us bombing out into almost a Category 1 hurricane by late Tuesday evening, going into Wednesday morning. So GFS is a worst case scenario with this. I mean, it bombs it out to almost a Category 4 hurricane here. I mean, we're looking at a pretty dangerous situation later on this week. I'm telling you guys. I mean, there's nothing that's really stopping this storm. And quite frankly, but we'll see. We'll see. Things can happen, but this is the GFS model, and it pretty much shows one of the higher end worst case scenarios for this system. And it develops it fairly fast, and it moves it into the western Florida Panhandle. So now I move through those areas, and then it fizzles out as it pushes north. But I mean, there's that. I mean, that's the worst case scenario for you guys down here in the western panhandle of Florida. So you'll want to watch out if you're in Florida. If you're in Florida, particularly the western panhandle, maybe I'll just say all parts of Florida, you want to stay weather aware for this system because consensus is pushing east, and quite frankly, I expect consensus to continue to shift east because what we have is we have a cold front or a trough that will be centered over Texas, Oklahoma, and that's going to play a huge part in where the storm goes. But like recent history has taught us, these East Coast troughs always went out. So, and I know we saw this a lot with Ian, we saw this a lot with Debbie, where models showed this a little bit further west, but what we saw is you saw these small ticks east that generally became more significant as we got closer to the storm because what's happening is these troughs that are out here out west, they typically dig deeper and they're a lot faster. So typically these storms end up verifying a bit further east than models like to show. So again, this is just model guidance, but I mean that the GFS is absolutely the worst case scenario with this system. Now we're gonna go over to the Canadian model. Here's another 12Z model that came out a little bit ago, and it gets it down to a strong tropical storm Cat 1 hurricane, And I do want to mention that there are some models that keep this system pretty broad because this is going to be a large system. Regardless of what happens, this is going to be a huge system. I mean, we're talking about probably a very large wind field and probably some significant surge potential along the Florida west coast. So, guys, there's one thing that's certain for this storm. This is going to be a large system covering a pretty big area. So, you know, while that could maybe limit intensification, it could certainly increase the potential for more widespread impacts compared to the more smaller compact storms that we've been dealing with over the last few years. So this may be more of a widespread storm that we've had in a long time, where we're seeing impacts way away from the center, which is not what we usually see. So certainly some really big potential there. Now here's an icon model that we look at, and it just came out a little bit ago, and it too gets it down to a Cat 1 hurricane going towards Cat 2 status, and then it moves it generally in the Western Panhandle. So again, model consensus is starting to grow that Florida will probably be impacted in some way, shape, or form. So that potential is increasing on that front. Now here's a Euro model, and we're going through. And again, it keeps it pretty broad, but it does strengthen it to like a Cat 1 hurricane, and then it pushes it into the Western Carolinas and Tennessee, which is also another downstream impact. There was a model run yesterday from the GFS that basically showed a very fast but really large system moving through the entire southeast, where, I mean, it was still Cat 1 strength moving towards Charlotte. Not saying that's going to happen, but recent history has taught us that whenever we get these systems that form down here in the Caribbean and move up towards the Florida Panhandle or the Big Bend area, they typically impact us in the Carolinas. So, while we may not see, the strongest impacts like those in Florida, we probably more than likely will see impacts here in the Carolinas. I can probably say that with great confidence that in some way, shape, or form, we're going to see impacts from this system in the Carolinas. How significant? Well, we don't have a system yet, so I can't really talk about that. But if you're wondering, here in the Carolinas, will we see impacts from this system? More than likely, we will sometime next weekend. So, but the Euro model, it strengthens this to a Cat 1 strong tropical storm, and it moves it through the Florida Panhandle. So models are generally starting to agree. Now we're going to jump now and look at the GEFS ensemble members, and we're going through time. And notice you're going to see a huge uptick in ensemble members showing pretty significant sits. And I'm telling you guys, some of these members are incredibly strong. I mean, I'm talking, we're down into the 930s in some of these ensemble members. So, I'm telling you guys, the potential of us seeing a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico is increasing. The potential of us seeing a major hurricane is also increasing, in my opinion. So, the only thing that I could really see limiting that potential for a major hurricane is the fact that this system is going to be so large. I mean, it's going to be a really large system. And typically when you have these really large systems, sometimes it takes them a little longer to get organized. But I'm telling you guys right now, we could see this system bottoming out into a 930 millibar hurricane, which is major hurricane status, even over that. So, we're talking, some pretty strong guidance that we're seeing for the model runs. Here's the EPS ensembles. These are also going to really brighten up, and these are going to generally in the same direction. And some of these members are showing a pretty strong hurricane, not as intense as a GFS, but the Euro does have a weak bias, so there's something to take into consideration. But generally, guys, if you're in Florida, you probably want to start actually paying attention and maybe just seeing if your hurricane kit is up to go and up to play, because more than likely, we're looking at a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico. How strong? We don't know. So, I talked about a major hurricane in the Gulf. Look at our sea surface temperatures. Well above normal. We're looking at some significant warm sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico, which is typical. This is all... I mean, we know how this works. This is only going to aid in development. So, you see these warm sea surface temperatures, this is going to aid in strong development. But it's not only that. We have a pretty favorable upper wind pattern as well, noted off the models as well. We're going to actually switch over to that now while we're here. And we have a pretty favorable upper wind pattern that I'm seeing. So, to get this system moving to the Gulf of Mexico, I mean, you generally have no shear. And then you're also going to have this trough interaction. and I think that's a little underrated. It's probably not being talked about as much, but you're going to have that nice trough interaction probably, which should help aid in upward divergence aloft. So generally speaking, a lot of things is working for this storm. There's no wind shear, there's no gyre to talk about. There may be some gyre on the backside of that trough as usual, but again, there's nothing that's really stopping the storm from really significantly intensifying. And if we get these model runs that continue to show this storm strengthening much quicker, like the GFS model, number one, this is probably going to be verifying a bit further east than this. But it's what's also going to happen is you're going to have a much better or higher probability of seeing a major hurricane. So guys, this is not this is looking like a pretty dangerous situation along that Florida West Coast. I typically don't use this type of language because I'm more conservative when it comes to these things, but I'm seeing some really not good looking guidance for this system. So you're along that Florida West Coast. You certainly want to keep watch on the weather on the radar because this isn't looking good for you guys. So I want to show you something else before I get out of here today, because I want to show you what's basically steering this storm, what's allowing this storm to do what it's doing, and what I think may happen, because I love to give you guys my overall thoughts so that when after this storm does happen, we can come back, we can verify that. So we're going to start off by just looking at the overall pattern in place for this system, and we're going back in time. You're going to notice our system down here in the Caribbean, it starts to form. Look at our trough. This is that trough that's coming in, which is going to help steer this system to the east. Now, in my opinion, these troughs, and in recent history and from my experience, I know that these troughs love to dig deeper, and they love to be a little bit quicker than forecasted. So it's possible that while GFS model has this storm over here, this storm could be over here towards the Big Bend, Tampa Bay area. I mean, it could literally be that far east. I think a good analog for this storm could maybe be Ian. Granted, Ian was a little bit different of a setup, but this system kind of reminds me of Debby as well, where models had this a little bit further west towards the western panhandle, towards the Alabama-Georgia line. But it will probably end up verifying further east, in my opinion. I think this will. I think this trough is probably going to end up digging a little bit deeper, and it's probably going to end up being a little bit quicker, which should allow for this area to be a little bit more clear. But again, that's all speculation. That's just a forecast for me. I think this thing verifies further east, but again, that's just speculation. We don't even have a low level circulation yet. So there's a lot of things that could happen. And there's still the potential, granted small potential in my opinion, that this system stays pretty broad and we just get a strong tropical storm. Granted, I think that's on the lower end of the spectrum, but again, it is a possibility nonetheless, so I should mention it. But overall, guys, that's all I really got. Brought you a little quick update, but again, as each day passes, I'm going to bring even a deeper update as we get more model guidance in. But I just want to get on here, show you guys some model guidance, give you guys an idea of what's been happening with this system. I'm telling you guys right now, if you're in Florida, you're going to want to start preparing, because we could be looking at a significant system, and this is only 102 hours out. So it's not like this is 200. This isn't an unreliable range. This is very in the medium term, and we're really headed towards a short term pattern. So if you're in Florida, you're going to want to watch out, and if you're in the Carolinas, we probably want to watch out and just keep our eyes on the model guidance, as we could see some more downstream impacts from this system later on as we get into next week. So that's all I got, but you're going to want to stay weather aware if you're in the southeast, but particularly in Florida, particularly the west coast of Florida. So I'll be back at you guys for another video update tomorrow.